Air shooting. This is a shooting drill designed to develop muscle memory in the upper body as well as proper shooting mechanics. Coaches will place a chair 5 feet from the basket, and the player has to make 10 shots from 5 spots on the floor while sitting in the chair. The player must be focused on getting the ball to a comfortable shot pocket with eyes locked in on the target. The player must fix the ball to ensure proper rotation and follow-through. This drill is especially good for players who are rehabbing lower body injuries and have medical restrictions. Shooting. This is a drill where the player is totally focused on the form of his and her shot and mechanics of the shooting hand. The player must hit 10 shots 5 feet from the basket from 5 spots on the court. The 5 spots are 2 corners, 2 wings, and the middle. The first 5 shots from each spot, the player must make the catch, then get the ball set in a comfortable shot pocket with only one hand securing the ball. The shot pocket must consist of the shooting arm forming an L shape from the shoulder. The player's elbow must be aligned with the shoulder, and the ball must be aligned above the elbow. The player must then shoot with the proper follow-through, finishing on the toes with a high release point. The second 5 shots of each spot are done in the same fashion, only the guide hand is as close to the ball as possible without touching it. This simulates the player's normal shot, so the player can be comfortable finishing the shot with correct follow-through. Coaches, please reiterate to keep the head up. The ball must always stay out in front of the shooter, and the shooter must always lock in on the target and not follow the path of the ball. This drill starts with 2 shooters and 1 ball. This drill, the shooter is on the perimeter awaiting the pass from the opposite player. Once the pass is made, the player must close out to the shooter as quickly as possible. After the shot, the shooter gathers his or her own rebound while the opposite player is relocating anywhere on the court. The rebounder now makes the correct pass, then closes out, and this drill is continued until the players make a combined 12 shots. Coaches, please ensure the shooters have hands ready and are in a low athletic stance ready to score. Wing corner. This drill, the shooter curls on the wing for the shot. Immediately after the shot, the player flares to the corner for another shot. This action is continued until 6 to 8 shots are made. Bump out. This drill, the player flashes up the line to the free throw elbow, then he or she bumps out to the wing for the shot. Once on the wing, the player can use reverse pivot to open up and can also change moves after the catch, using a maximum of 2 dribbles to score. The player must make 6 shots, then repeat the drill on the opposite side. This drill, the player runs over the top of 2 chairs, simulating the Iverson cut to the wing. After the catch, the player squares up as quick as possible, ready to shoot. This action is simulated from wing to wing until the player hits 6 shots. Curl. This drill, the player starts on the elbow under the basket. Once the coach starts the drill, the player slides baseline around the chair, then sprints to the wing for the catch and shoot around the second chair. This action should be duplicated until the player hits 6 shots. Attack pull-up. This drill, the player attacks the elbow extended chair with the stutter step move, then 1 dribble pull-up. The player then does the same move on the opposite elbow for the shot. Next move is the stop and go half spin. Move series. This drill, the player attacks each chair with the same double move, then sprints to the last chair on the wing with the same move, then a shot. The first move is the double cross. Next move is between the legs cross. Next move is behind the back cross. Next move is between the legs skip. Next move is between the legs D-Wade dribble. Final move is double behind the back. To complete this drill, it must be done on the opposite side. This drill, the player takes a shot on the wing, then backpedals to half court, only to sprint into the next shot at the top of the key. After the key shot, the player backpedals to half court, only to sprint into a shot at the opposite wing. After the shot at the opposite wing, the player repeats movement, headed back in the next direction, starting with the middle. This is done forming the letter M until the player makes 10 shots. Baseline. This drill, the player starts on the baseline and sprints along the 3-point line, headed to the opposite baseline. The player runs full speed until the coach yells ball, which indicates the pass is coming. The player must now locate the ball, catch and shoot, then continue with the sprint in the same direction. This action is continued until the player makes 7 shots. Entry, relocate. This drill, the player makes the post feed from the wing, then relocates to the corner or the top of the key, only to receive the pass back for the shot. This action is duplicated until the player makes 6 shots. To complete this drill, the player must repeat the action on the opposite side of the court. .60 makes. This drill, the player makes 20 shots from 13 spots on the floor. In between each set, the player can make 2 free throws. The spots are 10 feet on the baseline, behind the arc on the baseline. On the wing, 5-foot shots, 10-foot shot, and behind the arc. In the middle, 5-foot shot, 10-foot shot, and behind the arc. On the opposite wing, 5-foot shot, 10-foot shot, and behind the arc. The last set is on the opposite baseline, 10-foot shot, and behind the arc, for a total of 260. .3-1. This drill starts at the player in the corner for the catch and shoot. After the shot, the player curls to the elbow for a shot and then recovers to the corner for another shot. This sequence is continued until he or she makes 7 shots. The player then sprints the baseline and repeats the same sequence for 5 made shots on the opposite side. After those shots, the player returns to the start spot to repeat the same sequence for 3 made shots. Finally, the player sprints the baseline to the opposite corner for 1 made shot.
This drill, the player is focused on making a bank shot. The player starts at a 45-degree angle 5 feet from the basket and makes 3 shots. After the make, the player takes 2 steps back and from the same angle makes another 3 more shots. The player can keep going back based on his or her range.
Come on. Good. 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 That's it. Come on, let's go. Come on. Let's go. Rip. Boom. Get it up. Okay. Come on. There you go. Flow. 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 Smooth. Get in there. Smooth. Quick. Boom. There you go. Stay. Y'all gotta make good passes. Come on. Come on. Good. Come on. Come back. Good. Come on, that last one. Get tight and low. Twist. Come on. Good. 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 Speed. Good. Come on. Come on. Good. Come on. Come on. Set that last move. Let's go. Come on. Good. Come on. Come on. Yo. Hit. Hit. Come on. Good. Right at it. Right at it. Need speed. Hold the two, and then shoot it. That knee up. That must be your quarter. Oh, y'all on fire today, okay.
This drill, the player dribbles the ball on the wall, performing 100 reps with the right hand, 100 reps with the left hand, 100 reps two balls together, 100 reps two ball alternate. This drill helps with fingertip control. Coaches, please ensure that the players keep the ball above the head as high as possible, with elbows locked, and the ball stay on the base of the fingertip and not on the palms of the player's hand. To make this drill harder, the player can walk back and forth and change the heights of the ball while dribbling. Down. This is a two-ball drill where the ball handler starts by dribbling two balls together in the corner. Once the coach says begin, the player sprints while dribbling both balls together to the foul line elbow. While at the elbow, the player breaks the dribble down and spins opposite while dribbling the balls together at ankle length. Once the player is facing the elbow at half court, he or she attacks the mark full speed while dribbling both balls together waist high. While at half court, the player repeats the breakdown process, dribbling at the ankles and spinning opposite until he or she is facing the elbow at the opposite foul line. The player then dribbles to the mark and repeats the same sequence until he and she gets to the opposite corner. The player must then sprint to the opposite side of the court and repeat the same drill back down the court. This drill will be complete once it's done in the same sequence while alternating the two ball dribble. This drill, the player has two balls, one which he tosses in the air and catches without it touching the floor, and the other performs the change of direction dribble. This drill must be done until the player changes directions 12 times. The first is toss, crossover dribble. Next is toss between the legs dribble. Next is toss behind the back dribble. This drill, the two players attack each other full speed, and before they crash, they both execute the same move with the same hand, then replace each other. Once at the other end, they change hands and repeat the same movement. First is the inside out. Next is a crossover. Next is stop and go. Next is stutter step. Next is between the legs. Next is behind the back. Next is double cross. Next is between the legs cross. Next is behind the back cross. Next is between the legs D-Wade dribble. Next is between the legs high skip. And the final move is double behind the back. This drill, the player attacks from half court, and when he or she gets to the chair, they perform the specialty dribble, then attack the rim for the finish. After the rebound, the player makes the same dribble at the next chair heading up the court. First move is the stutter step. Next is the inside-out dribble. Next is stop and go. Next is crossover with an over-the-top finish. Next is between the legs with a pro hop finish. Next is behind the back with a tight spin for the finish. Next is double cross with a pro hop across the lane finish. Next is between the legs crossover with any finish. Next is behind the back crossover with any finish. Next is between the legs D-Wade dribble with any finish. Next is high skip between the legs with any finish. And finally, you have double behind the back with any finish. This drill must be completed on the other side of the court. Attack finish. This drill, the player starts on the block and dribbles backwards between the legs to the wing. Once behind the arc, the player makes a move, then attacks the middle for the finish. The player must then repeat same thing on the other side of the court. This sequence continues until the player makes 6 shots. This drill, the player dribbles around the chair on the perimeter, then attacks after each chair for the finish. The chairs are set 2 corners, 2 wings, and then the player sprints to half court, then attacks the chair in the middle for the finish. This drill, the cones are set 5 feet apart. The player begins by dribbling the ball simultaneously, attacking the first cone. Once at the cone, the player pulls back about 5 feet, then attacks the next cone. This is done until the player reaches the last cone, then he or she reverses and comes back to the start spot. The player does the same sequence, only difference is he or she is alternating the dribble. This drill, the players make the same dribble while opposite hands come together. The first dribble is between the legs. Next is the crossover. Next is behind the back. Coaches, you can set the desired amount of dribbles.
This drill, the player executes the high skip dribble 3 times, then explodes for 1 blow-by dribble, only to go back to the high skip for 3 and blow-by for 1. This is continued the length of the court. This drill, the player is using quick feet chopping up his or her steps as the dribble is kept behind the back. Please ensure the player's head is up and the feet are in rapid fire mode. This can be done the length of the court.
This drill, the player sprints the length of the court while dribbling 2 balls simultaneously, pulling a coach or a player. Next, the player must repeat alternating the dribble. Next, the player must repeat with the low crossover. Finally, the player must repeat with the over-the-top explosive crossover. This drill, the player sits with back to the wall, forming an imaginary chair. The player now starts dribbling the balls together for 20 reps. Next, the player alternates the dribble for 40 reps. Finally, the player passes 1 ball out and freestyles in the same position for 30 seconds. Coaches, the players can do 2 reps per day. This drill, the player dribbles the ball with quick changes while hitting the wall with the opposite hand. This is done for 16 changes. First is the crossover. Next is between the legs. Next is behind the back. The final is the scissors. This drill, the player straddles the bridge and dribbles with one hand back and forth over the bridge. This is done for 25 dribbles. Then the player repeats the same 25 dribbles with the opposite hand.
Next sequence is the one dribble crossover below the bridge. This is complete once the player crosses over 12 times. Note how the player stays low and snaps the change of directions with power and speed. Next sequence is the one dribble between the legs. This change is also done below the bridge, and the player must go between the legs 12 times. Next sequence is the one dribble behind the back. This change is also done below the bridge, and the player must change behind the back 12 times. Next sequence is the double cross. The player will make one power dribble, then execute a double cross dribble. This is done 6 times with one hand, then another 6 times with the other hand. Next sequence is the between the legs crossover dribble. The player will make one power dribble, then execute between the legs crossover dribble. This is done 6 times with one hand, then another 6 times with the other hand. Next sequence, the player does scissors with each change below the bridge. This is done for 25 dribbles. The object is to stay low and change low. Last series is mix it up for 30 seconds using any combination of changes, with all of them being below the bridge and effective. This drill, the player dribbles to the cone, then kills the dribble with rapid fire progression in a circle around the cone. Once the ball comes back to the original start spot, the player executes change of direction dribble and heads to the next cone and continues this sequence down the court. Coaches, this must be done with both hands. Changes. This drill, the player attacks each cone as if the defender, then changes direction headed to the next cone. The first change is the crossover dribble. Once on the opposite baseline, the player comes back down the court with the low crossover dribble full speed. Next, the player attacks with the between the legs dribble. The player comes back using a duck walk between the legs dribble. Next, the player attacks with the behind the back dribble. The player comes back using the behind the back escape dribble. Next, the player attacks each cone, then pulls back before snapping a change of direction headed to the next cone. The player then comes back down the court using the full court over the top dribble. Next, the player attacks each cone, then executes a triple move before headed to the next cone. The player then comes back down the court using the full court over the top crossover dribble. This drill, the player dribbles 2 balls simultaneously and changes both as he or she attacks each cone. The first change is a double cross. The next change is between the legs cross. The next change is behind the back cross. Next is a straight line attack where the player dribbles one time, then executes crossover with both balls. This is continued for the length of the court, one dribble, then crossover with both balls. This is also a straight line attack where the player crosses the ball back and forth without dribbles in between. This drill, the player holds one ball as if he or she is holding a plate above their head as they dribble the opposite ball back and forth in front of their body. Once at half court, the player switches balls and role responsibilities, repeating with the other hand. Court. This drill, the player sprints up the court while passing the ball between his or her legs with each step. Once at the baseline, the player executes the same sequence going backwards. The player executes full court sprint while taking the ball around his or her waist. Once on the baseline, the player executes the same sequence going backwards. The player executes full court sprint while taking the ball around his or her head. Once on the baseline, the player executes the same sequence going backwards. This drill, the player juggles the bounce of two balls for a count of 10, then walks to half court using the same juggling sequence. Once at half court, the player juggles in the opposite direction for 10, then walks to the opposite baseline to complete this drill. This drill, the player makes rapid-fire dribbles as he or she forms a figure 8. After 5 reps, the player does the same sequence while walking half the length of the court. Once on the baseline, the player repeats same rapid-fire dribble in reverse for 5 reps, then walks backwards to the start spot. This drill, the player attacks each of 4 cones which are 4 feet apart. After the last cone, the player passes to the coach under the basket, then sprints to the baseline. After the baseline touch, the player relocates in front of the cone on the wing, then catches and mixes up the defender only to attack the rim while changing his or her finishes. This is done for 3 reps, then must be repeated on the opposite side. Dribble. This drill, the player starts on the baseline elbow and dribbles to the chair on the opposite free throw elbow. Once the player gets to the chair, he or she pulls back in a straight line to the baseline. Once behind the baseline, the player executes a quick change of direction dribble and heads to the opposite free throw elbow to repeat the sequence on the opposite side. This sequence is done once the player completes 6 reps. The first change is the crossover. The next change is between the legs. The next change is behind the back. The final change is a triple move combination. This drill is competitive. The players are outside the lane with 2 balls, and on the coach's command, they sprint while dribbling together outside of the opposite lane, returning backwards, dribbling in the same manner. Coaches, you can set a desired amount or a time allotment for this competition. The next sequence, the players complete the same movement, but only difference is they are alternating the dribble. The next sequence, the players are lined up outside the lane facing the opposite goal. They proceed to slide to the opposite side of the lane while dribbling together. The final sequence, the players are sliding from side to side, but now they are alternating the dribble. This is a 2-ball ball handling drill. This drill, 4 markers are placed on each elbow of the paint. The player starts out on the baseline, and he or she has to dribble the balls outside of the markers. The player must first sprint, then slide, then backpedal, and slide again. After the last slide, the player then changes directions and head back in the opposite direction to the start spot. This is done for a desired amount of reps set by the coach. This action must be duplicated while alternating the dribble. This drill, the player starts 7 feet back in between 2 parallel chairs. Once the coach starts the drill, the player attacks the chair, then pulls back 2 dribbles, only to change direction quickly and attack the opposite chair. This sequence is continued for 8 reps. The first change dribble is crossover. Next change dribble is between the legs. Next change dribble is behind the back. The next sequence, the player uses inside-out dribble and attacks the same chair. This should be done in both directions. The next change is double move at the same chair, and this should be done in both directions. The final change is triple move combination, then attack the opposite chair. This should also be done for 8 reps. This drill, the player makes quick moves between the chairs, which are 3 feet apart, then finishes at the rim. These moves are done instinctively without a setup dribble in between. First move is double crossover. Next is high skip between the legs. Next is double behind the back. Next is between the legs crossover. Next is behind the back over the top crossover. To make this drill harder, coaches, you can add up to 4 chairs. To complete this drill, the same sequence must be done on the other side. finish. This drill, the chairs are set at half court 5 feet apart. The player must execute the same double move at each chair, then finish by executing that very move on the wing before the finish. The first move is double crossover. Next move is between the legs cross. Next is behind the back cross. Next is between the legs skip. Next is double behind the back. Next is between the legs D-Wade dribble. Next is between the legs over the top crossover. Next is behind the back over the top crossover. To complete this drill, it must be done on the opposite side. This drill, the player is alternating the 2-ball dribble, then passes with one hand off the bounce, and immediately makes a double move with the other ball only to receive the pass back and continue the same movement. This is done stationary for a desired amount of reps, then the player either walks to half court or full court doing the same sequence. This drill is complete once it's done with the pass being made with both hands.
Good. Go back. Good. Let's go. Triple. Good. Go back. Good. Come on, one more. Come on. Good. Come on. Go back. Good. Come on. Good. Go back. 4. Last one. Good. Good work. Good shot. Go back. Good. Go back. Good. Go back. Good. Go back.
Oh, in the air.
Other side.
But how can I know when I came from the bottom? Lord knows. Nigga, 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 Lord knows.
Good, Jerry. Good, Jay. Good. 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 One more time. Wait till he go before you go. Good, Jay. 2, 1, switch. Good. Count. 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 5, 4, 3, 2. Go. Snap. 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 2, 3. Come on. Count. 4, 5. Count. 6, 7, 8. Good. Good. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. Keep your head up.
This drill, the player juggles the one-hand pass off the wall for 20 reps. After that, the player switches hands to complete the drill. drill can also be done with 3 balls.
This drill, the 2 players are outside the lane as they make the correct chest pass back and forth 16 times. Please ensure they follow through and step into the pass. This drill, the 2 players make a bounce pass back and forth 16 times. Please ensure they follow through and step into the pass. This drill, the 2 players make the overhead outlet pass back and forth 16 times. Please ensure they follow through and step into the pass. This drill, the players are both outside the lane. They begin to slide to the opposite baseline while making a chest pass back and forth. Once on the baseline, they return with the same sequence. Next, the players use the bounce pass. Finally, the players use 2 balls with 1 player making a chest pass and the other making a bounce pass. Once on the baseline, they switch passes, headed back in the opposite direction. Nash pass. This drill, the player bounces the ball 2 times, then makes a pass off the bounce. The other player repeats, and they go back and forth 16 times. The players must repeat using the opposite hand. The players must now make a bounce pass. The players must repeat the bounce pass with the opposite hand. This drill, the players make the rat pass back and forth 16 times. Please ensure they follow through and step into the pass. They must repeat the drill using the opposite hand. Passes. This drill, the players are 10 feet apart, parallel facing the same direction. They must execute the no-look shovel pass off the bounce, back and forth 16 times. To complete this drill, the players must switch sides and pass with the opposite hand. Pass. This drill, the players are 10 feet apart, parallel, facing the same direction. This simulation is as if the guard is coming off a pick and roll, and he or she must make the pocket bounce pass to the block 10 times, as if they are passing to the rolling player. This pass must be done on the opposite side to complete this drill. Pass. This drill, the player comes off a pick and roll, and once in the paint, makes a hook pass back to the corner. This must be done 10 times. This must be done on the opposite side to complete this drill. Pass. This drill, the player attacks the middle, only to stop and use a behind-the-back dribble, then pass to the wing off the bounce to avoid the trap. This is done 10 times. Marker 30. This must be done on the opposite side to complete this drill. This drill, the player attacks the middle only to stop and pivot and pass to the wing to avoid the trap. This is done 10 times. This must be done on the opposite side to complete this drill. This drill, the player makes the over-the-neck pass to the teammate diagonally behind them. This pass must be made 10 times. Please make sure the player is not looking. This must be done with the opposite hand to complete this drill. This drill, the player makes the diagonal behind the back pass to the teammate 10 times. Coaches, make sure the player is not looking and follows through. This must be done with the opposite hand to complete. This drill, the player makes the diagonal behind the back pass to the teammate 10 times. Coaches, make sure the player is not looking and follows through. This must be done with the opposite hand to complete. This drill, the player has a live dribble mixing up his or her changes, then makes a one-hand pass off the bounce, only to catch the return pass and continue with the mixed dribble and pass off the bounce again. The player does this for 6 reps, then repeats same movement, only while moving forward all the way to half court or to full court. To complete this drill, it must be done with both hands. This drill, the players are 10 feet apart, facing opposite direction. The drill starts and the players must pass the ball back and forth, making the desired pass and reps set by the coach. The first pass is a pocket bounce pass. Next is the pocket pass off the dribble. Next is behind the back bounce pass. Next is behind the back bounce pass off the dribble. Now the player catches the ball and makes the accurate behind the back pass without a bounce. Coaches, to make this drill tougher, the players can make the distance between them larger. This drill must be done facing both directions. Together. This drill, the players are 10 feet apart, facing each other with the ball in the same hand. They must perform the same move and make the pass simultaneously. For this drill to be effective, timing is of the utmost importance. The first pass is one dribble pass. Next is catch and pass with one hand. Next is double move, then pass. Next is triple move, then pass.